Chairperson of Ghana's Electoral Commission, Charlotte Osei, says the continent spends unnecessary large amounts of money on technology due to a culture of suspicion. She urged the political class to tone down on their divisive rhetoric since it has direct bearing on confidence in electoral processes. Osei oversaw one of the most successful elections in the continent last week, in which the incumbent President John Mahama lost to opposition leader Nana Akufo. Reporter Trix Ngado caught up with her on the sidelines of the Nairobi Maendeleo Policy Forum, in which leaders from across the continent compared lessons on election management in Africa.
We are graced by the presence of the Ghanaian Electoral Commission Chair, Mrs. Charlotte Osei, who has overseen successful elections in Ghana, and I'd be making an understatement if I'd say that I wasn't excited, or if I'd said I was excited to pick her brain on matters democracy in Africa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Okay, so starting off, I would like to know, what is the secret ingredient in the Ghanaian election that has seen it so successful over and over vis-a-vis other elections in other countries?
I'm not sure there's a secret ingredient. It's basically a lot of transparency, a lot of inclusiveness. We've worked hard with the political parties on our process to make sure that the process is so strong that the process is accepted by everyone. And of course, we've had, I think, to be fair, candidates who have put national interest above self, so that when they lose, they are willing to concede in the larger national interest. We saw the current president-elect do that in the last elections of 2012 and also in the elections of 2008. And today is his turn, and we've seen the current president concede very graciously. So it's really about putting the nation above personal ambition and knowing that Ghana is bigger than any candidate or any political party.
Exactly. So what would you say is the difference between these politicians? Like in the forum, you have said that politicians seem to be the same across the continent. So what is it about the Ghanaian politicians? What are they doing to make sure that they actually have the guts to step aside when they lose elections vis-a-vis other countries? For example, in Kenya, we've had problems in the past in terms of handing over of power. What makes it so smooth?
It would be unfair for me to answer that. You'd have to refer that to the politicians themselves. But again, I think it's making sure and putting a lot of effort into ensuring that your process has a lot of credibility and transparency and inclusiveness. I'll give you an example. When we're printing ballot papers in Ghana, we print it at local printing houses, and every political party has representatives at the printing house. So they watch the ballot papers being printed. They monitor the movement of the ballot papers to the police and to the final destinations at the polling stations. On election day, before voting starts, they have to ascertain that the boxes are empty. They put their seals on the boxes. So we include them in every step of the process. So at the end, it's very difficult for a politician to genuinely reject the results unless he can also show irregularities in the process. So I would say that the key is a lot of inclusiveness, a lot of transparency, and working together with the political actors so that they accept the system and you have their buy-in.
Right. And what about the people? How do you ensure that they also accept results when they come out? Because I'm sure there are people who support a certain political party who feel bad when the party loses. What do you do to ensure that they're actually on board?
A lot of that responsibility is on the political party leadership to manage their supporters. But for our part as the Electoral Commission, what we did was a lot of massive engagement and education. We had, for about 6 months running, we had a weekly TV show for 1 hour where we brought people into the audience, into the studio, and engaged them on the electoral process. We put out a lot of information on how the process works, how the collation is done, how the voting procedure should go on. So there was a lot of engagement on social media with the citizen, so they could monitor the process together and they could, agree to the outcome when we declared it.
So you can never underestimate the importance of civic education. Is that what you mean?
Civic education, constant communication and engagement.
All right. All right. So, as a woman who is in a profession that is largely perceived as male-dominated, how have you made it so far, and not just once? And you know, how have you come against the obstacles that many women feel? It's not about you, how you see yourself, but about how people perceive you. How have you overcome these obstacles?
Well, first you have to understand that it's not personal. When they start punching at you, they'll punch at anybody who is in that seat. So you don't take it personal, you don't internalize it. Sometimes I felt that the attacks were to get me distracted and lose focus. So you don't, you just keep your focus and you ignore them. The noise will die down.
So, could you explain to me also the importance of today's forum and what you expect these kinds of forum could do to change the way things are done in Africa as far as democracy and other things are concerned?
Today's forum was really important for us to, as electoral commissions, you tend to work within your own national context. But the challenges are very similar across board. And we need to start working across nations and strengthening our electoral commissions. So Ghana has learned a lot from Kenya. Kenya can learn a lot from Ghana. And just for civic society to understand that the problems you see in Kenya are not peculiar to Kenya. And if they've been managed elsewhere, they can be managed in Kenya. But we need to be talking, we need to be engaging, even more so with the political actors, because a Kenyan problem is not just a Kenyan problem, it's an African problem. And that's why today's dialogue is important. If Ghana's elections had gone awry, it wouldn't be a Ghanaian problem. First, it would be a West African problem, and it would be an African problem because it would have implications for the peace and stability of the entire continent. And so it's important to step outside our national boundaries and start working together and talking together and finding solutions to the problems and the challenges that are African.
There you have it, right from the horse's mouth, the electoral chair of the Ghanaian Electoral Commission, giving us her take on what it takes to run a smooth democratic process. I'm Trix Ingado for KTN News.